Hello and welcome to the Metroidvania Review official tier list stream. This is the final stream of them all. Hi, Nick.
How's it going?
And so we have 23, I think, games to get through today. If we have extra time at the end, we'll talk about the future of this channel and some of our plans for everything else after this. And if you have any questions that you want to ask in the chat, we'll answer those. If we have any additional time, I am going to attempt to stream Noita. Unfortunately, I realized that this entire streaming session has been streamed at 1080p. Normally when I stream games, I stream at 720p so that there isn't any stuttering issues. Apparently, Noita is a very particle effect-driven game. And so I don't know if it's going to run at 1080p off of my hardware. But we'll talk about, we'll if we get to that point, we will. If not, we'll just talk and answer questions and talk about the future of this channel. And good morning, Salmase, Jesse, and Animator AR.
We're going to play it by ear.
We're going to play it by ear. The ear.
We're going to do it live.
The ear is a Metroidvania. You see that? See that wonderful map over there? All right.
Oh man, you know what you should have done
terrible.
for this? All of the little boxes for the games, instead of putting it into the tier list grid, you should have plugged them onto a Metroidvania map.
See, that would be really cool. A while back, I think it was the developer for Cat Maze and Pheromonium, put out a Metroidvania relationship chart where he had every game that he's played, and then he's like, La Mulana is sort of related to Mystic Bell, and he put
made a web.
Yeah, he made a web of relationships between games. I thought that was really cool.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
So when are you going to do that?
I don't know. If I do, it won't be on stream like this. It'll likely be just something I release if I ever sit down and do that. You know that
I bet there is a website that lets you create webs like that.
Yeah, there's like 200 games on this list, right? It takes a while. It took us 6 streams to get this far, so...
Nah, you can do it. It's fine.
Welcome, Cozy Turtle and Adomic. Let's get started. The first game on the list is called Sublime Sundae. And this game is a web-based game that you can play over on itch.io. I believe it's free. Yes, I think you can download it as well. I think I played the downloaded version when I play it. And I believe this was made for like a game jam or something. Yeah, great work on the jam. So I think this was for one of the Metroidvania game jams. The developer contacted me and said, "Hey, try this game out." And I did, and it's good. I mean, it's not like super fleshed out as you would expect, since it is a game jam game. But I think this developer showed a lot of talent for this. And it's a good mini Metroidvania as a result of that. You play a chef, and the object of the game is to go through and get different power-ups and collect items from inside your refrigerator, which apparently is a Narnia world where all of your ingredients are trapped behind a Metroidvania, which, would make my life more interesting if my fridge was like that.
I hate when that happens.
I think the best part about this game, and hopefully this doesn't go straight into... Let me pull this up on YouTube here. Let's see if this has footage of it. Is it has a really interesting mechanic where you throw your... my internet, of course, is not going to load this while I'm streaming. You throw your frying pan, and I think we might get lucky, and it'll show the frying pan right away, and it becomes a temporary platform. Yep, there it goes right there. Really neat creative idea for a Metroidvania, so if you're interested in just trying out new mechanics, this is a good proof of concept style game. I don't know if it goes beyond that. I think he's possibly making a fuller version of it, but anyway, try it out. It's free, and you can play it in your web, so you don't even have to download it. Probably one of the easier free games that I've recommended. And I think I gave this one a C. Nope, I actually gave this one a B. I liked it that much, and I think that I'm going to stick it there. I think it belongs there. So I actually sat down and went through and ordered these. So I'm going to try and drop this where I think it probably belongs, and I think that probably behind these games is probably appropriate.
Low B.
Yeah, low B. I almost gave it a C, so that makes sense. Yeah, it'll put it right there. I think it's worth that. I have not played Fist yet. It's on my list. I'm playing Eterna Noctis right now. I'm recording it. We'll see if it inspires me to do a video review of it. I'm kind of in a fight with that game right now. We'll see if I like it more in the long run. So that was South Sublime Sunday, a good low B tier game. Very impressive for a game that was made in a game jam. Next game is Myastere. I have no idea how this is pronounced. I am so happy that this is in Japanese here, because let me pull up my screenshots that I put in for my review here, because my favorite thing about this game is the translation is atrocious, and that makes it beautiful to me.
That's always fun. I like the art.
Oh man, there's so many good things about this game as far as like graphics, and that's probably about, or like art style is about as far as it goes. Dragon says that jerk said it will make me no boring. Was one translation. Phew, I didn't know a monster could speak human language. The ending has its own set of just wonderful Google Translate-isms.
Is it all your base are belong to us level?
It's so bad. And I feel bad making fun of it, because as somebody who studied other languages, I understand the challenges involved with that. But when you're releasing a game on Steam, you probably want to try and do a better job than that. But I really mean it when I say that is the best part about this game, because this game is not very good.
Would be a great insult. Like if somebody's being mean to you, be like, wow, I didn't know a monster could speak human language.
Keep that one in mind, kids. If you know Japanese, you probably should play it in Japanese. The premise behind this game, it's got a lot of lore for what is not a very well-constructed Metroidvania world. The environmental storytelling is very basic. Usually when these games do these 3D backgrounds, the details just get lost for some reason. I think it has a combination to do with, just the expense of creating 3D objects to put into the environment, and also you have to kind of have a contrast between the character and the backgrounds, and so it tends to get lost. Metroid Dread had the same problem. I think you mentioned that Metroid Dread just didn't look very good to you.
Yeah, visually it didn't really wow me.
Like Ori and the Blind Forest is like, I think that game's technically animated, so I don't even know if that counts. But as far as games that have higher graphical fidelity with still decently detailed backgrounds without getting a little bit too gaudy. Anyway, but that has nothing to do with why this game is bad. The reason why this game is bad is because it is based off of grappling hooks, and they do not do grappling hooks right. It feels like I'm fiddling with the controls more than I am like Environmental Station Alpha. You learn the grappling hook pretty quick, and it's intuitive. One of the best grappling hook games ever. This game is not that. You're constantly fiddling with it. You'll go directions that you don't expect. And then besides that, the actual level design just isn't really all that interesting. Excuse me. Bunch of caves. I don't know. It's just not... I mean, you can always read my full review on any of these, but it's just not very well constructed, this game. And so I put that one in the E tier. Not the worst. Not the worst I've played. I'm going to put that ahead of Endless Memories there. And I'll talk about how I reordered these at the end of this a little bit more. But not the best game that I played for sure. Also not the best game I played. Paradox Vector. To call this one a Metroidvania, and they actually call it a Metroidvania, the developer calls it that, is a bit misleading. It's kind of like if you took Doom and you could go back to old levels to unlock health upgrades and things, but then the Metroidvania aspect is just kind of dropped at a certain point. They recently patched this. One of my main complaints about the game was that the ammo was too scarce. You ended up using your pistol too much, and just dealing with ammo was a real pain in the neck. They recently patched it with infinite ammo. That would make it less irritating, but then, like, so I think it would have been better if they balanced the ammo a little bit better and made it more of a management thing, because giving a game like this infinite ammo means that then you just kind of pepper everything long range into a room, and then enemy encounters just become a non-issue, kind of removing the challenge of the game entirely.
Yeah, that was kind of a lazy solution to a problem.
I did mention this game's like Doom. This is a first-person game that claims to be a Metroidvania. Something interesting that it does with its graphics, the vector graphics, sometimes you'll walk through a wall that is invisible from one side, but when you turn around, there's a wall there. And it uses that to kind of make the maze seem, well, they call it impossible mazes. What's that word? When the Escher-esque, where it doesn't seem like it's physically possible. It's a trick. You figure out the trick pretty easily, because if you don't figure out the trick, you're never going to get through the levels, but it's a neat trick.
Liminal space.
Yes. So I don't know. I haven't replayed this game with the infinite ammo. I don't know if it would change my opinion at all about it, but I think that it goes on a little bit too long. There's a few enemy encounters that just take too long, and the Metroidvania aspect is terribly understated, and I think it would have been better if it was more of a focus. I originally gave the game a D. It might get upgraded to C-ish, but overall, not really my favorite experience. I'm going to go ahead and throw that just right there in the D tier. And a lot of people are really interested in how well this game was doing, because I think people are starved for like first-person Metroidvania games, and sadly, this one isn't it. I have another one that's coming up that I can talk about that's a little bit better, but kind of lacking in its own ways. Simona's Requiem is probably one of the most honestly advertised games on Steam. It is advertised as a chill platformer, short and sweet, all that. It is very slow-paced, and that is part of the appeal, is that you're just kind of you're just basically death taking a stroll with your scythe and just cut things in half. And it's just because the pacing is so much slower than what you would normally expect from an action game, it really does have that chill aspect to it. And as a shorter, did I call it a mini Metroidvania? As a shorter game, it does make a great break from, if you enjoy action games, but you've gotten too high off of your adrenaline, this is a great alternative that is still an action game, and not too long to take up too much of your time. And I think that the challenges are really well done.
It's interesting. Seems like, are there upgrades and all of that?
Yes, and you might argue that this isn't a Metroidvania because it's a little bit linear on how you do it, but there are a couple of instances where you can do things out of order. So yeah, you do get some upgrades. A lot of them are cooldown based, which adds to that slower pace of it. And I think that the game is just long enough that that slower pace doesn't start to become grating or boring. So I put that in the B tier. I don't think it quite makes it. There's a couple of issues with some of its bosses. I don't think it quite makes it to the A tier, but I do recommend it. I think it's a good one. And I'm gonna stick that just below Panda, Super Panda there. I'm just reading some of the comments here. One question is are the Batman Arkham games 3D Metroidvanias? We have a long podcast. I think it was one of our first podcasts. We call it podcasts. They're YouTube Let's Plays where we talk over it, and you can listen to them instead of. I think they've got RSS feeds now that you can listen to it podcast style. But we talk about that. It's probably about as Metroidvania as some of these other games that are on here, but arguably it's not. So I don't know. And welcome, Gunnar Luigi. Hello. And I would say that the first-person Metroidvania that's coming up, Couch Cow, is definitely qualifies as a Metroidvania. I just don't know if it's the best option. Oh boy, next game is Lost to Time. This game, I do not have enough time to talk about this game. I have plans to make a video review of this game. So as soon as I get my setup back and going again, and I can actually start video editing again, this one is on my high priority list. It may be the next one that I do. This game is a total mess. It's janky. It has all of the problems that some of the games in my lower tiers have, but it's got heart. and it's got unique mechanics, beautiful sometimes, ugly other times. It is something else. And again, I just cannot explain this game in the amount of time that we have thoroughly. I will say it is one of the few games that I would consider a true Souls-like. It has the stamina, it has the corpse running and everything that goes along with Souls-likes. It has a few things that are a little bit Kaizo-ish. I call one of the enemies in the game Kaizo crows because they just flip out of the trees. Like, they're hilarious. They're just a little triangle with beak on them, and they just flip out of the trees and just come right at you and kill you. And they are probably the worst jump scare that I've had in any game that I've ever played. Just because of the way they fly out at you.
So someone doesn't like birds, is what you're saying.
If you play this game, you're going to be banging your head against the wall between the jankiness of the physics and just figuring out where the heck you're supposed to go. And this game is awful, and I give it a B. And I will explain that more when I do the video review. And that B is almost entirely based off of just how interesting the game is. And I'm actually going to put that high up here. I think I might even put it right there, right after Dundara. It is something else. Recently, one of my friends linked a video about Stockholm Syndrome games, and then he asked if Lost to Time was a Stockholm Syndrome game. And I'm like, without hesitation, yes.
100%.
This game needs more reviews. It needs more attention. It's something else. Anyway, we've talked enough about that. Yeah, I do need to play Willie Jetman, and welcome, Mark Markson. Next game is Saving Princess. This is made by Brainos, who's actually coming out with a game called Biomass soon. We're just going to show that off a little bit. It looks really cool. Seems almost Metroid-like, and I would say that Saving Princess is actually sort of Metroid-like too. Probably more Mega Man-like, but we'll actually look at the game we're talking about. But I just wanted to plug Biomass, not to be confused with the other Biomass game that we talked about last week. This is
How much Biomass?
This is a different Biomass Metroidvania game. Yeah, it's one of those titles that's like, you gotta have a subtitle or something, because once other people start using it, it's gonna get really confusing.
Just be like Biomass, and then the subtitle is Massive Bio.
Massive Bio. That sounds like a BM. That's so Saving Princess. It is sort of like Mega Man, the way it controls. Let me see if I can get some footage. This is another itch.io game where I don't have the built-in like video from the store page. So it controls a little bit like Mega Man. You have a charge shot. I think so. I think the charge shot charges automatically. Like, you see these little dots in the corner. After a while, they'll charge up, and then your shots will become stronger if you wait. I think it's every third shot or something like that. You have a limit to the number of your shots, and then they slowly recharge over time. So unlike Mega Man, where you have 3 shots on the screen at a time, you kind of upgrade that, and that is like your main upgrade for this game, because when you shoot down, it works like a jetpack. So as you can see, this guy is platforming across this gap over here. Really interesting approach to like an ability upgrade type system. Like Mega Man, you kind of have a choice between 4 different areas that you can go to, and you get different elemental upgrades to your gun based off of that. And there's some interesting bosses that kind of use those mechanics to its advantage. Why did that open up 2 screens? So, very interesting approach to the level design. Where this game kind of falls a little bit short to me is I don't feel like the bosses are necessarily the best designed. So that I ultimately ended up giving this game a 3 out of 5, falling a little bit short of that B tier. But I think it's another good proof of concept game if you want to try something just a little bit different. And if you like Mega Man, you may enjoy kind of how it plays. It's a name your own price game, so you can technically get this one for free. I always recommend supporting your developers, but if you want to try it out, there is no cost to you if you choose to do it that way.
I wonder what the highest amount somebody paid for this game is.
It's a good question. Hopefully there's somebody out there that whaled them, because I think the developer deserves it. And obviously they're doing well enough that they're making another game, and I really look forward to Biomass.
I hope like their mom bought it for like $100.
Just so I'm not coughing, this has happened again. I'm going to go ahead and put a cough drop in my mouth. All right. So that was Saving Princess. Rocketron, underrated, Contra-like Metroidvania. Interestingly, this is a lot like Saving Princess, in that one of the things that gates you is this rocket power here. As you can see, it comes out of the back of your gun. You just fly forward. You can use it to dash, and you can also use it to get up to places you couldn't reach before. And where you can reach is determined by the amount of fuel that you have. And I think that might be the only ability operating the game that you get. The level structure is definitely very linear. You're essentially going from teleporter to teleporter, so you could argue that the Metroidvania aspect of this game is understated. But I think it's if you enjoy games like Contra and run and gun games like that, it has a lot to offer there. It has a cave story-esque system with its weapons, where each of your weapons has hit points, so whenever you get hit, your gun takes damage, and eventually you could lose your gun because of that. I think that also represents ammo. I don't remember exactly how that works, but there's a bit of a dynamic where you don't want to get hit, because it also affects the effectiveness of your weapons. You do, of course, have this infinite pistol weapon, but of course that's not the gun you want to use. Interesting leveling system where you can level each of your weapons individually. Rocketron's solid. I think I gave it a B overall. Nope, I gave that one an A, and I think it deserves it.
I feel like we've maybe talked about this in the past, but real quick, what is the thought process behind you got hit, which means you're having a harder time, so let's make the game harder? Like, what's the game design thought behind you got hit, let's make it easier for you to get hit again?
I don't know if your gun being leveled down makes it easier for you to get hit.
Well, you're fighting the boss longer now, because you're not doing as much damage.
That's true. If you could argue that. I think
so. Why?
This is a problem that all developers have to deal with, and that is, what are the consequences in your game? I mean, would you say that Cave Story is worse for that? Do you think that...
No, I don't even necessarily think it doesn't work here. It's just that's a mechanic that I see in a lot of games.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious what the thought process is. If it's simply, well, that's the threat of becoming less powerful makes getting hit more poignant.
So let's spin this a little bit more differently. Rather than looking at the negative aspect of it, let's think about what it does for people who are doing well. Not being hit makes you feel more powerful. So not only are you getting that rush from performing well, but also your guns are stronger, so you feel stronger. It affects the game feel in a positive way in that sense, even if the consequence is that a poor player will feel like they're reaching unsurmountable odds as a result. So
so basically it's pushing the gameplay experience in two different directions for two different gamers.
I think it if you took it away, you would have a flatter, more even experience for all players. But by doing those consequences, you create higher highs, even if the risk is that there are lower lows.
All right, that's a pretty valid way to do it. It's higher highs, lower lows.
That's
now, unfortunately, if it was one player that experienced both of those in balance, that's valid. But if the higher highs are experienced by one player and the lower lows are experienced by a different player, then you're then honestly, you're going to end up with highly divisive games like
Sure.
Dark Souls.
Like Dark Souls, yes. But I mean, just like any investment, is the risk worth it in the end? And
Obviously, yes, for Dark Souls.
The people that enjoy the higher highs, I think that's what they're shooting for. So,
and I guess that's who they're making the game for.
It's an interesting aspect of game design. Then you have a safe game, some AAA game that tries to make the experience flat for everybody, and then it ends up just being flat for the people who want the higher highs. And okay for the people who just want an escapist game. I think there's
or they just don't
types.
Or they just don't want to be beaten by lowest lows for the whole game.
Yeah. It takes a little bit to get past that. I don't know how to teach a person to push past that, or even if it's even worth teaching a person to push past that. But those of us who have pushed past it will say that this was a great game. So it's hard to. It's one of those things. It's just a risk that you take as a designer.
It's an interesting.
Yeah.
It's a conversation we've had many times in many different forms.
Yes, and I think we've gotten nicer about it over the years.
Oh yeah, no, we used to be horrible.
Well, I've learned a lot over the years as well, but and yes, Matt, we will be releasing the copy of this list after the stream, right after the stream, as soon as I'm make
as we
sure
finish it off
correctly. So this is the last stream, so
we didn't want to post it because that's spoilers.
Well, also we didn't finish it, but yes. Next game on the list is Trash Quest. If you ask me what my favorite mini Metroidvania is, here it is. Trash Quest.
Okay, I can't see it yet, but I really hope the main character is a raccoon.
You will not be disappointed.
Oh, excellent.
This is an entirely, well, I wouldn't say that actually. It actually does have bosses, but it is a platforming-focused Metroidvania where you go through a gauntlet of traps that are a lot like Path of Pain, and it gets really difficult when you get to the DLC. The main game left me a little bit wanting for more, and then the DLC was like, okay, maybe I didn't want more. But I enjoyed this thoroughly from start to finish. It kicked my butt, and one of the goals that this game had was that it only has one checkpoint, and so you unlock shortcuts from the center of the stage. That only would work in a mini Metroidvania like this. Metroidvania-ness is like any mini Metroid. Did I say mini Metroidvania-ness?
Yeah.
As far as Metroidvania-ness goes, like any mini Metroidvania, there is some linearity that goes along with this because you kind of beat the game in chunks. That is kind of a characteristic of mini Metroidvanias, but it has that feel. So if you want to have a little taste of Metroidvania and you don't want to spend too much time on it, Trash Quest is your game. Unless you just can't get past certain parts, this game might take you a whole lot longer than the 2 hours that I put into it. 2 hours is how long it took me to do, including the DLC that they added for those that just craved a little bit more of this game's mechanics. And I'm glad that DLC exists, because that was one of my biggest complaints when I first beat it, was it wasn't quite long enough for me to have my appetite satiated, and then that DLC just thoroughly pushes you to your limits. But yes, it is cute. I agree. Animated AR. The premise is just fun. You play a raccoon, and obviously the object of the game is to find a trash pile and just enjoy it. This developer is making more games. Francis Vase. They recently put out another game called Trash Pit, which is the post game for Trash Quest, where apparently you have to defend your trash pit now, and it is a top-down shooter, Robotron style game that is a score chasing game. I have not tried it yet, but I just think it's great that this developer is becoming successful. You can get this game for only $3 today. It is totally worth that. It is my favorite mini Metroidvania. I think there's a contest between this and Robot Wants It All. This one is hands down my favorite. Not quite the 5 out of 5 mini Metroidvania I'm looking for, just rating it as a game, just in general. I do put this one in the A tier though, and I'm actually going to put that relatively high on the A tier because I think it deserves it. I think everybody should check this game out. I also think that this one was in the itch.io bundle. You can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. Even if it's not, it's totally worth $3. play as a raccoon. Who doesn't want to play as a raccoon?
Yeah, you can't beat that with their tiny little grabby hands.
Next game. Try this game. It's called Insect Adventure. If you like Metroid style games, and there aren't actually that many, in spite of people complaining that there aren't enough Igavania style games, the problem with trying to say it's like Metroid or it's like Castlevania is that there's just such a wide variety of different games that can use that Metroidvania structure. And ever since Hollow Knight, everything's been kind of going more Soulsy. This one is definitely more on the Metroid side of things, in spite of the fact that your main weapon is a hammer. The way you interact with the world, the amount of world you can interact with, the amount of sequence breaking that you can engage in is very Metroid to me. It does have some leveling system aspects that are sort of Paper Mario-esque, that you kind of equip badges or they call them relics, that have different effects. But overall, the way you explore the world is a lot like Metroid or Robbie Ribby or any of those games where the focus is on exploration. And exploration is the big advantage of this game, because if you can't tell from the footage, it is a little bit jank. When you're swinging your hammer, as you can see, the animation is very choppy. And when you see in this video, anytime he's fighting any enemy, you just kind of go wild on the enemy's face with the hammer and hope for the best. As you can see, he's just a mosh pit of swinging your hammer around. There isn't a whole lot of nuance or strategy to the combat. And that's one of the reasons why I don't put this in the A tier just yet. But I think that this is a very talented effort from this developer. And I look forward to other games that Mayo Force will make in the future. And I highly recommend it. Even if it is a bit early game-ish, I think it is a strong effort from that and totally worth playing. And that is going to go high in my B tier. Probably right behind Lost to Time, actually. So, good game. I have no idea how you pronounce this. Frauki's Adventure. I think I say Frauki because you're like the servant of the Frog Queen or the Fairy Queen or something. You're like a frog, an anthropomorphized frog. I don't know.
So you're a frog.
Not really a Metroidvania. You just kind of unlock the game gradually as you, and you get keys that allow you to enter other areas. I think you have these little gems that open up gem doors. As you can see, there's 4 gems right there that you kind of use to progress the game. The main focus of this game is the combat, so we should probably put on some of the video here. Very cool animations. The sword you have is just this awesome lightsaber thing, and I would say that the combat is a little bit janky, not quite where it needs to be a A-tier game. But if you enjoy you have to get used to the physics a little bit, but if you enjoy a good combat game, I think it is a strong contender for something that is worth playing. It has probably one of the hardest gauntlets at the end of it. So expect as you play this game to have a mostly level difficulty experience where it ramps up. And then there's like this skyscraper at the end where you have to get out your claws and dig into the concrete and climb it up. And if you don't like that, then don't play it. But I enjoyed overcoming the challenge eventually. If you don't know, I generally don't review games until I beat them. And so this was one of the ones that was giving me heart problems by the end because, you have deadlines and sometimes, and you don't know how long it's going to take you to get through it. Frauki's Adventure was one of the games that did that to me. But I think I think that the mechanics are solid enough to put it in the B tier, maybe not quite good enough to make it to the A tier. Another thing I'll mention about this game is that the theming of the game is just ridiculous. Both sides of the conflict in this game are completely deplorable. Like they show off all the fairy people as just these totally indolent, terrible people, and that's who you're fighting for. And then the robots are just as terrible. It's kind of a get off my lawn type game. I don't know. It's funny. That part of the game is kind of amusing to me. So I recommend it. I think this one's pretty cheap, $5. So, and I think it took me 3 hours. Here's the thing: when you're trying to beat a gauntlet that you just don't know how long it's going to take you, I didn't know if it was going to take me another 4 hours. Like, it's rough sometimes.
Yeah, gauntlets are always tough, especially if they're tight. Like if you're doing the same 6 minutes over and over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the object becomes do well on the first part of the gauntlet so that you can make it past the second part of the gauntlet. Yeah.
And you know how I feel about those.
Yes, you would not like this game, Nick. Other than that, it is fun to explore and find all the health upgrades, and you're going to need them to do that gauntlet.
Get through the end, yeah.
Next game is a very sad game called Indivisible. And why I say it's sad is that it is 100% unfinished, and it feels that way. And the story behind why it's unfinished is also sad, because you can just take one look at this game and just see how much talent goes into the art of this game. And
it's the thing that excited me was that the combat felt vaguely like the original Valkyrie profile, which I'm so starved for a combat system that feels like that. I was super excited about it.
I have a PS4 game. I think it's what is it called? Somebody in the comments or on the chat, let me know what this game is called. It's a game on PS4 that I think is made by the same people as Valkyrie profile that uses the same combat system. And supposedly it's a Metroidvania. I haven't played it yet.
That's intriguing.
Yeah, I actually have the physical copy, so I don't. My house is a mess right now. Otherwise, I would just go off and find it and bring it up and show it. But I don't know where it is, so I'll find out after the stream and make a comment below on what that game is. But anyway, talking about Indivisible. As far as the combat is concerned, it's a little bit quantity over quality. You got this cast of diverse characters. Thankfully, you don't have to level them all up. I think they all level up based off of your main character. They actually have a relationship score with your main character that increases their stats based on how long you use them. The turn-based combat is Exist Archive. That's the name of the game. Thank you, Gunnar Luigi. I appreciate you, Clutch, helping us out there.
What was it? Exist Archive?
Exist Archive. Yeah, I need to play that game.
How did this go completely under my radar?
One of the reasons why I haven't played it is because it's on the PS4 and it's easier for me to record Steam games. But now I have a capture card, so I can do all that. I bought it for Metroid Dread, so now I can go back and maybe even review the game. I don't know if it's compatible with the PS5 though. So it's one of those games that release. It's like any Atlas game on the PS2 where it just doesn't. You don't have access to it anymore. I really wish Atlas would just put their games on Steam so that you can access them on modern platforms more easily, or even on the PS5. I don't care. Just as long as you can access it on a modern platform, I don't care. Anyway, Indivisible combat, it's fine. I think the most fun we had with the combat was fighting monsters that were higher level than us because we actually had to use the mechanics to fight them. Otherwise, it's kind of smashy, which honestly, Valkyrie profile was similar when you over leveled your characters, but that was kind of the point of the game.
Yeah, when I played it as an 11-year-old, that's definitely how I played it.
Yeah. But from Metroidvania standpoint, has some really fun upgrades. Actually, that was one of the parts of the game that I enjoyed the most was exploring. There's a little bit.
The art is just so good.
Yeah, there's a little bit of repetition when you're going around. The physics are not really perfect, and there's a couple of platforming sections that were just kind of like, okay, here we go again. We're doing this again. A little bit longer than I would have liked. And then the final boss, unfortunately, I don't know what's with games that do this, but just change the rules of everything. So no matter what you did leading up to that point, as far as building your characters or whatever, you can't really use it because now you're doing a Simon Says thing with the final boss. And
that's aggravating.
What saves the game is that as stupid as the story is, and I'm going to say stupid, it gets touching by the end and justifies all of its stupidity, which kind of caught me off guard. Like, as I was playing, I'm like, this game is dumb. But by the end, I was like, man, I love these characters. This game's great. So, here's something I don't like about the game. See this companion cube? There's just way too much referencing in this game. There are a lot of Kickstarter characters, or people who did Kickstarters on that. And I think they had a tier reward where you could have your own NPC added to the game. You go into town and there's freaking OCs everywhere that have nothing to do with anything. And it's like hard to find the people who actually progress the game because they kind of blend in a little bit because everybody in this game is just diverse, which is a good thing. But those OCs are just, I don't know. It's too many.
There should be a word for that. Like, you've got AAA isms. There should be like
Kickstarter isms.
Kickstarter isms. Yeah.
And then there's the problem with the game just not being finished. There was a promise to add things like Shovel Knight and other characters to the game, and I think this is beta footage. This doesn't look like the final game in this trailer that I'm watching right now. And so there's a lot of problems with it, and it feels unfinished by the time you get to the end of it.
Did the studio fold? Is that...
Sort of. The CEO was apparently accused, or allegedly accused of things. I don't want to say anything that is libel or anything like that, but the entire dev team basically split off. And I think they formed their own company. Hopefully we see things from them in the future. It's the same company that made Skullgirls.
Yeah. Well, that makes... I knew that in the back of my head, but they certainly know how to do animated visuals in a video game.
Yeah. So, it's an unfortunate specimen. I think I gave it a C just because of all the issues, but it's in C tier because I really enjoyed the characters by the end, and I still kind of recommend checking it out. There are people who will say don't buy it because the only person who it's supporting right now is that CEO that kind of ruined everything. But if you get a hold of it in a bundle like I did or whatever, I mean, there's ways.
But it's also, I think it's on both Game Pass and whatever Sony's Game Pass is. So you've got avenues to play it.
Nice legal avenues to play it. And then there's also there's an ethical dilemma there. I'm certain that the people who put so much passion into this game, very clear passion that this game has, would like you to see the art that they had created. So to boycott it because of who's getting the money right now makes it kind of a shame that you won't be able to see what they put into this. And it really is a passion project, and I think it paid off, at least to some degree. So we'll go ahead and move on from Indivisible, and the next game is Elliot Quest. This is a highly requested game. It has mixed reviews on Steam. It has only 75 reviews on Steam, which actually surprises me because this game was released in 2014. It was available on a lot of Nintendo platforms. This was actually released on the Wii U, if you believe it or not.
What's that?
some console that failed. So this is a lot of people compare it to Zelda 2, and it wears its inspirations on its sleeve.
It's the game that I wish Phoenotopia was.
The game you wish Phoenotopia was, or
going into Phoenotopia, I was like, "Oh, it's Zelda 2," and then it wasn't Zelda 2, and I was like, "Oh, it's still good, but not Zelda 2."
This one's probably a little bit more Zelda 2, except your main weapon is a bow. And the way that the weapon levels up is actually really interesting. I think you increase the speed at which your bow fires, and I think power is very conservatively given, which kind of keeps the game relatively balanced. So that's good. Where this game kind of falls apart for me is it gets extremely obtuse sometimes. With its puzzles and the way things go, or the way things you have to interact with the game world. And worst of all, the final boss is on my list of worst final bosses that I have seen. That we did a stream with the Metroidvania podcast where we talked about bosses. I mentioned that Drilly Willis was in there, and this game is in there, and I complain about the final boss. The short version of it is that the game has a whole bunch of mechanics that it just doesn't use on the final boss, and makes up its own puzzle for the final boss that just kind of undermines everything that you've learned up to that point. When you have a game
same issue as Indivisible.
Yeah, actually, it kind of trips on itself. Although I'd say that the final boss of this game is worse than that, because this game is like a Zelda-like in the sense that you gather powers throughout the game, which you use to interact with the world in interesting ways, and you use none of that on the final boss itself. Now, the dungeon leading up to the boss is fine. But I felt that this game just got a little bit too frustrating at times in not really fair ways. But it is a good novelty in what it is. If you enjoy Zelda or Zelda 2, and Zelda 2 is flawed in the sense that it's got its own set of unfairness and jank.
Oh yeah, Zelda 2 is deeply flawed.
So I would say that this game is actually less flawed than Zelda 2, but also, I don't know. Zelda 2's got
People are less familiar with how to get around its flaws.
Expect to spend a lot of time just trying to figure out where the heck you're supposed to go next. There's a lot of secret bosses and things, which are actually probably the best part of the game. If you can ignore the fact that the final boss ending is a little bit disappointing, there is actually a lot of good content in this game. So it does come recommended, but I do put that in the C tier just because of all those issues. I'm going to put that actually probably right here. I think this is a good spot for it. I may reorder these a little bit. There's a reason why I didn't try and do that live, because I'm like, here's the problem with trying to rank things as granular as this, is that Rogue Legacy is a completely different game from Escape from Tethys, is a completely different game from Usurper. So how do you stratify that? Like, it's not really easy. Grime. Very, very liked by its fan base. I did not like this game. That's being very blunt to start off with. It has been patched since I played it, so it's possible that some of its issues were resolved. I think that the thing that really killed this game for me was that it's very slow-paced, and it's a Souls-like. So, you know that issue that you have with going back to your boss? Imagine if it was like that, except that you can't run past enemies as easily, or in some cases, the checkpoint is at the bottom of an elevator that literally takes 50 seconds to ride up to where you were, of just sitting on the elevator with nothing else happening. There's an instance where that happens. And then, for whatever reason, as the game progresses, it focuses more and more on really slow and clunky platforming, which isn't playing to the game's strengths. And then it kind of teases a artistic story that doesn't really pan out for me. Slightly pretentious-ish story, but it's look and like it starts out really promising. I really hope that it kind of built up to something greater, and it just kind of lost its direction by the end of the game, in my opinion. It seemed like it was going to be a very parry-focused Souls-like style game, and then that kind of falls apart near the end. I guess they decided the parry was too OP instead of trying to develop that mechanic, so it kind of loses its identity as the game progresses. And I think it was still trying to find its identity as it's being patched. The first two chapters are great. Another thing I would complain about is that on the subject of theming, I wanted it to have more symbolism, but it kind of is like, this land is hand land, this land is eye land in the background.
Hand land.
And this land is mouth parts, like teeth land, that type of thing. So a lot of interesting concepts, but I don't know if, I think it didn't really go beyond the concept phase into anything particularly meaningful. So I don't know, it kind of fell apart for me. And of course the gameplay is ultimately what drove the nail into the coffin. But the demo does give a good first impression of the game. I think that the first two areas are fantastic. But I don't know if it's one of my favorite games. I think I stick that one in the C tier based off of what I know about it. It's possible that the patches would bring it up. From my impression, though, it's more that it was just trying to find an identity that people actually liked with it. So just overall, I don't know if I really like this one a lot. But a lot of people do. So it's got 94% positive recent reviews and 86% overall. So 2,000 reviews.
Sounds like it didn't quite. So when people are developing games, often you hear about how, like, as they're developing it, their mechanics change because they try something and they're like, oh, that feels really good, and then they steadily over the course of development kind of lock down on the specific mechanics and vibe that they want. Sounds like Grime didn't quite get there. Yeah,
it doesn't feel like its vision. It doesn't really feel like its vision had direction.
Yeah.
But, if you like abstract things that don't necessarily represent anything, or you can put your own interpretations onto it, you can do that with this game. So I could come up with some nice ludonarrative slash stark narrative textual interpretations of this game that could be good, but overall I felt like it's just not. It kind of lost its direction. So that is Grime. Unbound Worlds Apart. This one feels a little bit more like a linear game, but it does become more and more Metroidvania as it goes on. Gimmick behind this game is that you can open portals into another world where things work differently at any given time. The portal stays static until you turn it off again. So you drop the portal to make that rock smaller, and good interesting puzzles based off of that, and different locations that you go to open portals to different universes with different rules. Like one area, the gravity is opposite, so when you open the portal, you turn upside down. In this case, the portal does follow you around. So lots of different level design gimmicks that keep the game fresh as you go along. And it's good. I think it's just a good solid game that doesn't quite stick out as being memorable to me, just because it's just kind of straightforward. Here's a gimmick. I don't think it quite finds its voice, but it does execute things quite well. If you want a game that you won't necessarily remember next year, that you just want to relax with, I do recommend Unbound Worlds Apart. I give that game a B.
Just a quality stock game.
Yeah. I think it's it's a lot like a lot of the other games in the B tier. Worth your time, but not necessarily going to be one of those grades. Oh boy, Vomitoreum. This is the other first-person shooter game that I was teasing earlier when I was talking about Paradox Vector. Vomitoreum is made by Scumhead, who has made quite a few games, actually. And this one actually qualifies as an FPS Metroidvania. You do a lot of backtracking, which is one of the issues that a lot of these have, that there isn't enough use of the world. Even though it has ability upgrades, it doesn't necessarily give you a reason to go back other than upgrades. This one actually does, and there are actually some good points in the game where you have to find where you're supposed to go. Very edgy game, lots of body horror going on. Some interesting story that goes along with that. If you're into that type of thing, definitely the nasty, demonic, Lovecraftian style. What do you call that? Theming behind it. My issue with this game is that because you have infinite ammo and enemies don't respawn, you just kind of walk into a room and go back out the exit and spray at them. Yeah. Some of the bosses get a little bit challenging, but most of them are just circle strafe until you win. And just as a result of that, the combat just kind of falls flat for me. As far as the actual Metroidvania exploration, I think Metroid Prime just did it better in general. And yeah, this style might not be for everybody, of course. I think it's still very interesting, though, and I do kind of recommend it if you're just starved for a first-person Metroidvania game. It's not particularly long. I think it took me 3.3 hours to beat, probably because it was so easy. But I think it's better than Paradox Vector for sure, as far as that goes. And Scumhead has some talent. They didn't really put a challenge in this game, and that's kind of why I stick this one in the C tier.
Reminds me of, there's a shooter that's been in development for a real long time, and I can't think of the name, but it's biopunk like this, and it's horror.
Yeah.
Like Strife or Trime, or it's one word.
Yeah.
And this feels like a demake of that.
Maybe. Let's see. Strife. Is this it? No, this is an old game. So, all right. Well, anyway.
I remember it had a gun where you shoot teeth.
I think that this might be another attempt from Scumhead to make a Metroidvania FPS. I think he might try again, or they in the future might try it again in the future.
Scorn.
Scorn, that's what it is. I'll just pull that up just to show it off. Yeah.
Definitely similar
Biopunk,
vibes.
yeah, Biopunk. Definitely higher fidelity on this one. And,
well, it's also been in development for a super long time. Like, it felt dead for a couple of years, but apparently now it's actually coming out.
Well, that's how it goes. Sometimes it just goes quiet. The development cycle is, hey guys, I'm making this game. Here are my concepts. Here's the Kickstarter, stuff like that. And you like release updates, go completely silent for 3 or 4 years, and then suddenly the game comes out.
Pops out. Yeah.
That's kind of how indie development works.
True.
I think it's just that they get tired of putting updates out for everyone after a while. It's like, I just got to focus on this at this point. So,
well, yeah, marketing is exhausting.
Heartforth Alicia is like that. Hopefully we see Heartforth Alicia suddenly come out. Poor developer has been complaining about how the world that of indie gaming has changed so much since they announced the game that they might not even be successful at this point. And that might be true. Hopefully the game's good enough that it stands out. Of course, a lot of people have been looking forward to it at this point. I don't think it's going to fail. So. Wario Land 3. I was told this was a Metroidvania. I was lied to. It sort of is. You do get upgrades as the game progresses. This is probably going to play sound. Let's try and get some footage in here. It is 100% a level-based game, and you really can't access... Like, it just tells you where to go, and I think that's what kind of prevents it from being a Metroidvania. But if it didn't tell you where to go, it would also be a very frustrating game, because you would be going to all these levels trying to figure out where you might have ability upgrade that would get you to progress, especially since a lot of the times what you need to progress is like a plant that grows in the level that wasn't there the first time you played it. So it keeps itself interesting by giving you more powers as the game progresses, but to call it a Metroidvania is probably a bit of a misnomer. My issue with this game, and the reason why I'm not rating it higher, I know a lot of people have really good nostalgia for this game, is that like Wario Land 2, it made Wario immortal, which meant in order to make the bosses have consequences, basically you have to play them perfectly, or you fall through a platform and then you get swept away by a river or something, or you just fall and you have to climb back up again. And that just made the bosses really kind of frustrating to kind of repeat over and over again.
Yeah, that's just death with extra steps.
Yeah, death with extra steps. I would have rather died, to be honest. But and then some of the bosses are just so jank that like it takes so long to of that repeating process to figure it out that it, you know, if you have save states, yeah, can avoid that a little bit. But you know, obviously that's not necessarily how the game should be judged. Judge it based off of its merits of how it was intended to be played. But the final boss is really good. I do recommend this game. It is an interesting. There's a word I keep trying to use and I can't remember what it is. Oddity, the novelty from the past. That if you want to try something that Nintendo tried, I recommend it. I would like to play Wario Land 4 to see if it's any better. I know that one adds hit points. Another thing is that they have this golf game that you have to keep playing, and I didn't like it, but you have to in order to progress. But yeah, and the final boss is good, and I think that it's a good creative game, just like many Nintendo games. I give that one a B.
I mean, it makes sense that golf game's in there. Isn't kind of one of the gimmicks of Wario mini games.
It became that way. This was before that happened. This was back when Wario was still trying to do its own platforming thing.
Oh.
Kind of wish they.
This was before all the WarioWare games?
I think so. WarioWare, I think, started on Game Boy Advance. This was a Game Boy Color game.
Huh.
Yeah. All right, we're moving on to almost the end of when I posted written reviews on the website. Oh, let's talk about Demon's Crest real quick. I didn't pull up a page for Demon's Crest. Darn it. We'll have to improvise real quick. I did not prepare.
Yeah, remember, we're doing it live.
What's that?
Remember, we're doing it live. Playing it by ear.
So Call Draft actually played through this fully during stream for one of our earlier Metroidvania podcasts. So I'm just going to show footage from that. And there's my intro that I created. So this is the game that has created the coin of Crest-like. It is a mostly linear platformer where you can backtrack to other levels with powers that you get. As you can see, you can transform into these different creatures and kind of progress in a sort of Mega Man-ish style game as an evolution of the Game Boy game that we looked at last week. I kind of wish it was a little bit more like that, where you got wing power gradually until you got infinite, but in this game you just kind of start with the infinite wing power. So it's really just kind of trying to find all of the health upgrades and things like that in the levels. I think that most of the game is optional as far as that goes, which is why you wouldn't necessarily call this a Metroidvania. But judging it on its own merits, it's a good, solid game that has its flaws. I think that switching between the different costumes, or I'm going to call them costumes, the different gargoyle forms is a little bit clunky. I think there are mods that upgrade that if you want to ROM hack your game. Overall, though, I think it's just a good, solid Capcom game from back in the day. I didn't actually review this game, so I'm just kind of playing this one by ear. It just happened to be on the list, but I have played this game. I don't know if I would stick this in A or B tier. I'm just going to throw it in the B tier. I don't know if it quite makes it to A for me. I think it's one of Caldraft's favorite games. Caldraft asks, would I consider Demon's Crest a Crest-like? And absolutely not. But yeah, if you want to see a full playthrough of this game, just go to Metroidvania Podcast, episode 6, and you can watch Caldraft play through that while the three of us talk over it about various things. I think we're talking about maps and stories. But if you want to just see the whole game, you can see Caldraft playing through that. Next game is Psycron. Psycron was at the very end. I did 2 more games, written reviews. This was one of them. Psycron is an example of a game that I think, if you want to talk about biases and what happens when you have played over 200 Metroidvania-ish games, some might argue that I've only played 50 if you want to actually count the ones that are actually Metroidvania. Nevertheless, I had reviewed over 200 games before this, and I think that this is going to do a lot better for people who haven't played things like Metroid Fusion, which is what it's clearly inspired by. Because to me, most of what this game does was already old by the time I got to playing it. And I think that informed my opinion quite a bit. In fact, some of the things that it calls back to, it's just like, if you're going to make references to games, try and do something different from those games so that I'm not directly comparing the two. Like some of the things it does that it takes from Metroid Fusion, it's just like, don't just take this from Metroid Fusion. Do your own thing with it. It doesn't feel right here. It feels just edgy. Like you thought that the feel that you had when you played Metroid Fusion was cool without really capturing why it was cool in Metroid Fusion. With that said, though, it is a good, solid Metroid-style game. I like the way that the game evolves. Like these little platforms, when you turn the power on, or before you turn the power on, they just kind of sit on the ground. But when you turn the power on, they start hovering. The environment slightly changes as you go through. Similar to Metroid Fusion, it's kind of segmented into different sections of the game where like different branches of the space station that you can explore. So you might argue that this is a little bit less Metroidvania as a result of it. I'd say it's probably more Metroidvania than Metroid Fusion was, though. Bosses are solid, but it doesn't really quite pass that threshold for greatness to me, mostly because I don't think it lives up above or uniquely enough from its inspirations. And I don't think the bosses quite hit that level of expertise and design that would put it in the A tier, but I do think it's a good, solid B tier game that I probably like a lot less because of my background. I think
you more than anybody is going, well, almost anybody
are issue.
Yeah, you're going to have that issue.
So, since you're not me, you may like this game a lot more than I did. And if you're craving more Metroid-like games, you may enjoy this game. Not particularly long. I think it took me 2.2 hours, and that's me after years and years of doing this. Inexistence Rebirth is a very interesting, straightforward game that's broken for balance. Very janky, but once you figure out the jank, it's pretty easy to manipulate. Didn't take me very long to beat, 2.6 hours. And it has just kind of a slam in your face story beat at the end of the game that has no build up to it whatsoever, but is almost amusing as a result of that. And then kind of recontextualizes the entire game as something, I don't know, not very well thought out, but interesting nevertheless. Super straightforward, kind of Castlevania-ish game with some upgrading, but you're leveling up and etc. Sits at 73% reviews. I think that's probably pretty fair. I personally don't remember what I gave it. I put this on the Steam curator. Let me double check what I put on there, because ultimately this game is kind of forgettable. So I gave it I gave it a D tier. Which I think is appropriate. Kind of amusing though, just the way it just kind of dumps a story thing on you at the end of it. A little bit of so bad it's good there.
That's always fun.
Yeah.
Well, that's sometimes fun.
Sometimes fun. I think if you're playing this one straightforward, like you want to try and abuse the mechanics of this game as much as possible, because if you don't, then I think it might be a little bit frustrating. Darksiders III. I played this one a little bit earlier this year, actually. I was told it was more Metroidvania than any other 3D game, and it's probably true. You play as what is it? Fury, this pompous horseman. I don't know if you're familiar with the Darksiders series. They use biblical references just kind of willy-nilly to create a story. So you have the 4 horsemen. That's been the main characters of all the games. In this game, you fight the 7 deadly sins, and the set dress or the references to the Bible are just more like I don't know, light set dressing rather than anything meaningful. That's one of my complaints about the game, is that it reminds me a little bit too much of like World of Warcraft, where it's just a bunch of emotional melodrama that isn't. It's very predictable, and as a result, I didn't find it all that interesting. Kind of frustrating, actually. The story was to me. Also frustrating was the game's core mechanics. It's kind of a hack and slash, sort of like Devil May Cry, just without the nuances that make that like a great game. Basically, you whip at things until it starts blocking you, and then you charge your attack to break its block, and then you repeat. And that gets really old after a while, which is one of the reasons why I don't like this game that much overall. I haven't played the other Darksiders games, so I don't know how well it compares to that. People call it a Souls-like because it has corpse running and leveling up that you have to do, but I wouldn't say it's a Souls-like. It's just kind of a very safe hack and slashy game with probably not the best enemy design to support it. The camera is kind of a pain to use. Very not very well done action mechanics, but the actual Metroidvania world exploration is pretty good. It could use a map. I think that's probably my biggest complaint about it, is that actually going back to places that you've been before can get a little bit confusing. I don't think that the landmarks are strong enough, like Dark Souls, to really bring you back to places you haven't been before. But I do think that to call this a Metroidvania is actually fairly accurate, even if once you get to a dungeon, it plays out more like a Zelda dungeon rather than part of a big contiguous world. But I think that aspect of it is pretty solid. I give that one, I think I would give that one a B tier. Maps are for the weak, says Caldra. Maps are for the weak when the level design is good enough to overcome not having that available to the player.
And that's not even necessarily a question of making a memorable map. Like, Hollow Knight has an incredibly memorable map, and you still have to go to the map to find your way around at times.
At times, yeah. Dark Souls 1, I don't think you do, though. I think that they did a good enough job with that. I have that game practically memorized, and this game doesn't quite achieve that. I think it has a lot to do with a lot of its backgrounds being like samey buildings or etc.
Right.
Or you're like in a sewer.
Cave.
Not quite as memorable. Didn't quite have what it needs in order to be mapless. I think the map would improve the game. Infernax. Somebody commented on one of the previous videos for this stream that wondering what I thought about Infernax, and here it is. Infernax is a game that came out just earlier this year. I accepted a review key for it and put it on the curator. I don't know if I like it enough to give it a video review, but I think my favorite part about this game is that the gore is just fantastic. I don't normally like gore, but this game
is over the top.
Yeah, it's super visceral. Like the guy's just got his face smashed in. I'm sorry if anybody thought this was going to be our streams are never made for children. We play Blasphemous on this channel. Come on.
It's a game of blood pinatas, basically.
Basically, yeah, and that's kind of the best part about it is when you hit things, it really feels good in a horrible, violent way. As far as the actual level design, it's not terribly strong. It's pretty linear. It's kind of like Zelda 2 in the sense that the dungeons in like Zelda 2 were very kind of straightforward gauntlets of enemies. You're so powerful in this game that it never really reaches a strong level of challenge. Playing it on the harder difficulty, like I think what really saves this and why I put it in the A tier is the fact that the bosses are actually really well done, but I also don't know if I ever had to try more than a couple of times with them. The normal difficulty, I think it might be a little bit too punishing. I wouldn't feel... I think you shouldn't be ashamed to try and play it on the easier difficulty where the death isn't as punishing as Zelda 2. Backtracking is kind of a pain because of how linear things are. But it has some interesting other aspects to it. Like you do have a few story choices that inform the ending that you get. You can be evil or good. And, in a game where you're playing a guy with a mace that just smashes up Lovecraftian horrors, being evil is just almost comical because you just start smashing up everything. And so I recommend it. I think I would stick that in low A tier, with the possibility that I may change my mind and move it. By the way, I put Daryl Deluxe up in the A tier after reordering things. I still can't decide on that game, so it's going to be right there with Daryl Deluxe, where it's right on the edge. B for between.
It's BA. It's ba.
Ba. Yes. So yeah, Infernax. Good. I don't know if I'll remember it for how bloody it is. Its final dungeon is especially trying on the normal difficulty, the base difficulty. So I think it might be better if you play this with the less death consequences ultimately. I actually forgot about this game until I was going through and looking at what we had left. This one's called Odallus, The Dark Call. This is actually probably more Crest-like. Actually, no, this is a game I would compare directly to Demon's Crest. I like it more than Demon's Crest. The difficulty is almost Zelda 2-like, though, which is why I almost said Zelda 2. But the way the game is structured, you have the level select, and then you go into the levels and unlock different abilities, and you can go back and unlock you can now move heavy objects and that type of thing to kind of progress how powerful you are. I think you can, like in Demon's Crest, you can access the final boss pretty early, but you're going to want to go through and explore to get all of those upgrades to make the final boss actually possible, because this is one of the hardest games that I've played. I would say that this one's definitely better than Infernax as far as like the actual challenges and how interesting the actual level design is. And kind of similar in the sense that it is fighting just these crazy creatures. It's fun to see just the weird things they come up with. It has a few flaws, as you saw. It has a minecart level, which we always love when a game suddenly shifts what type of game it is. But overall, I really, really like Odallus. I think Joy Master did a great job on this one. I highly recommend it. Clear A tier game for me, and I would put that higher up than. I think it's a good solid A tier for me. There's no borderline with this one.
I like that it's definitely got the blue-orange color palette of the early Castlevania games.
Yeah, it has an interesting, early Castlevania look to it. And Salmase says that you can, on hard mode, it remixes where all the items are, so it gives you kind of a new experience when you play. I don't think I played it on hard mode. So I may have put it on hard mode from the start. I don't remember. I usually do that. But this is one I'm definitely going to go back and play again, partially because it just technically doesn't have a review on the website. It only has a review on the Curator, because my original review was like a sentence long, so so basically a Curator review. But I recommend it. It's one of my favorites. I'm okay with Couch Cow says, honestly, I like the sudden and severe but brief genre shift. I like it sometimes. I actually think that the minecart sections in Odallus aren't really all that bad. But a lot of times it's like I was enjoying the game, but then suddenly you're pulled out of it. I don't think Odallus necessarily does that, but it's definitely not as bad as Pharaoh Rebirth, where it's like, why is there this car level? This car level's just so, like, you have to be so perfect on it, and there's nothing else leading up to it. But Odallus, it feels a little bit more like it's part of the game. Sometimes those can be good, though. I agree. This is the website where you can get a game called, and it's not showing correctly, Niflas Games. I'm just going to go ahead and pull up the last Metroidvania podcast that I did. I may go back and join the Metroidvania podcast again, but I played footage of the last game that we're going to talk about today, which is Within a Deep Forest. Let me make sure I got that name correct. Yeah, Within a Deep Forest. And in this game, you play as a ball. And there is a kind of a funny, I like how you got eaten by a dragon there. It has a story that it shows at the beginning, but it's completely pointless. But kind of amusing. I kind of like how the Floss puts that into their games, like a Knit Underground. This is the same guy who did Knit Underground, which we talked about last week. In Knit Underground, like, the story is one of the more interesting parts of the game. In this game, it's just kind of set dressing for just kind of pointless mechanics. In this game, you play as a ball and you unlock different ball forms, and then there's different puzzles based off of that. Like, for instance, one of the balls is made of glass, and so if you fall too far, you crack, and so you have to kind of carefully make your way through the level. A lot of the balls are just stronger and faster, which allow you to access more areas. But basically, it's a puzzle platformer where you're bouncing all the time. Like, for instance, in this one, you kind of have to push these buttons to guide this little cricket to the bottom of this tower in order to unlock the next thing. A lot of good, solid challenges. It has a minecart section, as you see here. I think that this game is just so full of variety, I don't think it really matters. Plus, this part's just kind of pointless and short. But very charming game. I actually like this one more than Knit Underground overall. Also free, so I highly recommend checking it out on their website. This is a good game that where the theming is completely unnecessary, but just adds to the charm of the game. Like, for instance, you find this bear inside this room, or this is the one I talked about in my review, and I think I brought it up in this video just so I could talk about it. But in this room, the gimmick here is that as you cross the room, the platforms turn off and on. And they kind of troll you with those platforms, and you have to kind of go around it. They could have just had it do that, but instead they put these little gnomes up at the top, and you hate those gnomes. Just to add a little theming, a little bit of flavor to the game. And I just thought that was great. Lots of charm and creativity. and another good freeware game that came out earlier in the early 2000s. Within the Deep Forest holds a special place in my heart, and I put that one in the A tier. I think it's good solid challenge with a lot of charm to it. Where in the A tier should I put it, though? That's the big question. I'll put it right above the Underground, because I think that they're similar, but I like Within the Deep Forest just a little bit more. So we're there, Nick. We made it.
We did it.
I took Furwind off the list because I don't think it qualifies enough as a Metroidvania. Considering some of the things that have made the list, that says something. But I left all these down at the bottom. I also took 8 Eyes off the list. Just because the rest of these, I haven't played enough of Subnautica to comment on it. Quest for Glory isn't Metroidvania enough to actually put in there. Nancy Drew obviously belongs in the Nancy Drew tier. And then Oblivion, it was a joke. A lot of these games are on here because of all the constant discussions about what belongs as a Metroidvania, what doesn't. Nancy Drew is Cero's favorite to tease people that this is obviously a Metroidvania because it is the least Metroidvania game out there. Death Stranding was a kind of another joke about Metroidvania-ness. So, just again to explain why there's a Nancy Drew tier on here. I will release this list and put it in the comments once this video a little bit later this afternoon. Once I vet the list and make sure it's saved correctly, so that when I link it, it will actually link the list. I will link probably a PDF copy of it as well, just to keep it pure in case people end up being able to edit it after I link it. I don't know if that's how this works. It's actually my first time using tier makers, so I don't know exactly how that goes. So we have 10 minutes left. So we actually used most of the time. I'm sorry, Nick. I don't think we're playing Noita today.
Wah wah. That's okay.
So just to kind of explain how I reordered things, I kind of put my favorite game in each tier at the top. Like, for instance, Moral Manor, I think definitely belongs at the beginning. And then I kind of ordered it from there, from my favorite to least favorite. There's a couple of these that could probably switch places. Like, for instance, Robbie Ribby and Guacamelee probably could switch places pretty easily. Some of these that are close to the edge here, that I moved to the close to the edge, I could put more on one side or the other. I mostly put Metroid Dread at the bottom just because of reasons I spoke of in the second stream when I talked about that. That's just my own bias feeding into that. But yeah, that's the full tier list, all nicely ordered and ready to go. Talking about, I missed placing Final Fantasy Tactics. Final Fantasy Tactics is clearly S tier, but not a Metroidvania. The treasure was friendship all along in Metroidvanias. That's probably, friendship gating. We'll call it that. So let's talk about a little bit about the future of this channel. I've talked with Nick about this off stream, and we like doing this, right, Nick?
We sure do.
So I think we're going to start streaming once a month. We're not going to do it once a week like we have been doing, but the idea I have for the theming of the stream is a segment I'm going to call One or Done, which is where I play a game blind. And I have lots of Metroidvanias in my library that I'll probably never get to for a review. So this will give them some light, and then I can give my opinion after an hour of gameplay. So we're going to still have up to 90-minute streams where we have like a 5-minute intro, and then I play the game for about an hour. If I like the game enough, I might play it for longer. And then we stop and we discuss what we thought about the game and whether or not we want to continue playing it, or if we're just done playing it from that point forward. Nick is going to play the game for an hour before the stream, and then I'll play it blind on the stream, and then afterwards we'll both have played it for at least an hour, and we can talk about whether or not it's something that we enjoyed. If that's something that people like, comment below. We're going to do it anyway, so it doesn't matter.
We're doing it for us.
We're doing it for us. So yeah, that'll be once a month. I will, if you're subscribed to the channel, which I hope you are, you'll get the notification of when those streams are coming. As far as video reviews, I would like to get back into that. This is still in my office that we just built like 3 months ago, and I got a new house. I moved somewhere else for my job, and I'm using my. Let me show you this real quick. This is my lamp from my from my nightstand. This is my laptop. camera. We threw this together because we hadn't done anything for 6 months or 8 months or however long I've been gone.
Yeah, originally we're like, yeah, we could probably knock this out in 2 sessions.
Maybe. I never thought we could do it in 2. Like when I was planning this, I'm like, yeah, 4 weeks is probably enough, and then it ended up being 6. I am going to get an actual camera. We're going to get some lighting that's actually good, so that there'll be a little bit more quality. But I will be showing my face on stream from now on, because I think especially if I'm going into something blind, I am very good at controlling my voice. I am not always as good at controlling my expression, so you'll get to enjoy that. And get some of the truth. So I try and soften my words and be a little bit nicer and a little more constructive in my criticism. However, the emotional reaction that I have to things is not always constructive. So there's going to have that on the stream.
Are you going to get a fancy ring light?
Yes, actually, my wife was looking into that, and that's what we're going to try and do. So I'll probably still be in this room. I'm probably going to put some padding on the wall to try and get the voice or the sound a little bit better, but we'll do that. I was talking about reviews. We just moved into this house, and so I haven't had good access to my computer that I've done all my video editing on for probably over a year now. And that's part of the reason why I haven't done any reviews besides taking a break, as you saw on my website. I've decided to go a little bit different direction than what I had been doing for the last 4 years on this, as far as the Metroidvania review goes. I'm going to focus more on YouTube now. As far as release schedule, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish like 2 or 3 videos at a time, at least 3 videos at a time, possibly more. And then I'll make an announcement. Here comes some videos. And then you'll see 1 video a week after that. And then you'll probably see me go silent as far as video reviews go for a while. I like the idea of releasing them in chunks, seasons, if you will, rather than sporadically. But at least you'll have the monthly one or done streams to look forward to as regular content. Hopefully good content. I think it'll be good. I like the idea of it.
We'll enjoy ourselves, and hopefully that transfers over to viewers enjoying themselves as well.
Yes. I think you, Nick, expressed the desire to do Dark Souls, have me go through Dark Souls at some point.
Yeah, I think that would be compelling. Well, I've just mentioned that before Metroidvania's, Dark Souls was kind of your thing.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be fun, and I think we both have a lot of things to say about Dark Souls. Kind of an indie hit that doesn't have a lot of coverage online, so I think we could really bring something new to
small indie company that didn't make very much money. Actually, it's true. From Software didn't make a ton of money before Dark Souls exploded, and now Elden Ring has just taken over.
Are you implying that Armored Core was not a breakaway success?
It was. I think it was pretty good, but it kind of petered off after a while. It kind of became Sonic the Hedgehog, yeah.
It definitely peaked in, PlayStation era, probably.
I think it was just the first few games. I heard the PSP games are really good. I haven't tried them. But the PSP itself was just like a piracy nightmare as far as actual sales go. So, yeah. House review win? Probably never. I'm not going to show my entire house. Certain things like I would love to show my children and things like that and talk a little bit more about myself. But for the sake of protecting my family, my wife doesn't want me to do any of that stuff. So I'll probably never show my whole house. So this will be the most you see. I might throw a poster up in the background or two just to decorate the place. But Dark Souls review where I explain why I think it's so bad. Dark Souls is probably still my favorite game. Even after all of this, I'd still probably say that Dark Souls 1 is probably still my favorite game. I actually have a route that I call the Dark Souls Tour route that I got a friend into Dark Souls doing that, and I would love to show that to Nick.
He really wants me to see all of Dark Souls.
Well, he keeps playing Dark Souls 2, and he's like, man, I don't know if I like Dark Souls. I'm like, stop playing
Dark Souls 2 is probably the one that I played the deepest into.
Yeah. You're having fun with Dark Souls 3 until the game deleted.
Yeah, until I decided to delete 10 hours of... And I actually know that's not true. I played Elden Ring more than anything else. I put 50 hours into Elden Ring.
So Couch Cow recommends that we do blind playthroughs. Foot reveal. I'm not revealing my feet. So Couch Cow recommends that we do blindfold playthroughs where I have the monitor off and only play the game based off of what the stream chat is telling you to do. That would be wonderful if there wasn't a 15-second lag.
Should make it literally impossible.
Yeah, especially if it's an action game or something.
Hey, you know what? If a goldfish can play Pokemon, then we could do that.
I don't know. A bit about what other games should and shouldn't take from Dark Souls. That actually would be a very interesting video and something I would certainly have an opinion on. Something I might do in the future. As far as non-game reviews, I would love to continue the Metroid story series, but people need to watch that video more in order for me to feel like it's worth it. It's hard to put. That is the most work I've ever put into a video. I think it still only has like 600, 800 views. That hurts a lot. So if people start watching that more, I might do more story reviews. I have non-Metroidvania ideas to talk about. I want to do a video about Chrono Trigger and Bioshock. If people are interested in that, comment below. Let me know if that's something you want. More analytical videos about like what games should not take from Dark Souls. That's actually a good idea for a video. I mentioned in a previous stream from this tier list streams that I might be interested in doing a video about criticism. I have a lot of things to say, mostly in response to watching people like Mahler, who also have opinions about what is good criticism, what's bad criticism. I feel like I have something I can add to that conversation without having watched everybody who's added to that conversation. That's really my only hesitation, is that I have my opinions about it, but I wouldn't call myself an expert on the subject. So I just have, from my own personal experience and anecdotal experiences I've had in my life, something I think I could add to the conversation. Xenosaga, I would love to talk about Xenosaga. That's another interesting one. That one was an interesting video to do. Time to start watching the Metroid story video every day. I don't know, only if you like it. I got a lot of good comments on that video. I know people liked it. It just didn't move the way I hoped it would.
It's one of those things. It's tough to break out and become visible outside of your bubble.
Yeah. I'm just gonna have to accept that that's just where the channel's gonna be at for a while, and that's fine. I think we talked about this before off stream. It's like it's wonderful that there are 1,500 people that are subscribed to this channel and enjoy the content. Thank you so much for enjoying it, and I should be happy with that. 1,500 is a good number. Honestly, 5 people is a good number. If I'm making 5 people have enjoyment at any given time, I should be happy. I think that the expectations of where this channel should be versus where it is should really just be tempered and just enjoy what we have, and we enjoy doing this together. So
what we do,
like I said, we're probably gonna be doing the when we're done streams just mostly for ourselves. It's fun to talk about games, and if you want to join us, we're happy to have you. We're glad you're here.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a good time to end the stream. So thank you so much for tuning in to these tier list streams. I hope it wasn't too much rambling. I've gone through all over 200, I don't know the exact number, over 200 games and put them on a tier list. I sort of promised to do this after I closed the Metroidvania Review Discord. And here it is. I did not know how this was going to take form. I kind of jokingly said that I was going to do a song version of it where I just list the title of each game and make a 5-minute version of it with the games in order of how I would rank them. But anyway, I may still do that. Look forward to that on April Fool's some year, and when I finally get around to deciding that that's worth my time.
Do an Animaniac style song.
Yeah. Super Metroid, Hollow Knight, Pinotopia, La Milana, it doesn't fit. Maybe if I had an animator helping me out, maybe someday, maybe if the channel grows enough that I can afford to do something like that.
Hire an animator.
Well, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have an especially adventurous day.